Hello, and welcome to the Spicy Pod Sleep Stories. I am Michael, and tonight we will go to the heart of Prague's shadows, where passion and peril blur, when a quiet librarian discovers an ancient birthmark tied to a banished demon prince. Her world ignites in ways she never imagined. Ravyn is dangerous, dominant, and bound to Elira by a fiery mark that pulses with forbidden power and desire. She's marked by the demon, and he's claiming more than just her body. As their fates entwine, resisting him becomes impossible, and every stolen touch threatens to consume them both. The rain fell like whispers over the old city, each drop painting shadows into the cobblestones of Prague. It was the kind of night that felt stitched together by secrets, wet stone, candle-lit windows, and the distant hum of cathedral bells swallowed by mist. Elira Vane sat alone in the back room of the university archives, a place untouched by time and lit only by a single desk lamp. She worked late often, but tonight something felt different. The manuscript before her was wrong. Not in language or condition, but in something deeper. It had arrived with no record, no name. Its black wax seal bore a symbol her heart seemed to recognize before her eyes did. A swirling mark, angular, ancient, nearly identical to the faint birthmark curled like smoke along her left wrist. Her fingertips hovered over the seal. She told herself it was coincidence, but her body didn't believe it. Her pulse had started to thrum the moment she touched the book. The skin around her mark felt warm. No, hot, like the ink on the page was watching her, breathing with her. The seal cracked. It didn't break like wax. It split, as if the air itself resisted. A sharp gust of wind tore through the archive, though the windows were shut. Elira gasped as the flame of her candle flared unnaturally high, then died. She was left in stillness, shadows pooling in the corners of the room like spilled ink. She pressed a hand over her wrist. The mark burned. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. The streets below her apartment echoed with footsteps, but none she could trace. Her curtains fluttered, though the air was still. And then came the knock. 3 slow raps against the wood. Not the door to the building. Her door. Elira froze. No one knew she was home. No one should be there at all. She lived at the top floor, far from the street, down a hallway no one ever wandered. Her heart thudded like it was trying to escape. She moved silently, barefoot, until she stood before the door. Another knock, but not impatient, measured, calm. A voice followed, low, smooth, velvet wrapped in smoke. Elira Vane opened the door. She didn't remember unlocking it, but her hand turned the bolt. He stood there, tall, dark, soaked from the rain that didn't touch his skin. His coat was black and unbuttoned, his shirt clinging to a lean frame that radiated unnatural heat. His eyes were almost black, but not quite. There was a glow behind them. Gold, or maybe ember. Something lit from within. He looked at her the way no one ever had, like she was a promise. "You opened the book," he said, voice low and unmistakably amused. "Which means the mark has awakened." Elira stepped back. "Who are you?" He followed, uninvited, and yet the room didn't fight him. The shadows wrapped around him like he belonged to them. He reached out, slowly, deliberately, and touched her wrist. The contact sent a jolt through her. Not fear, something else. Heat, curling beneath her skin like fire beneath glass. Her breath caught. He smiled almost gently. Almost. "You were born marked by me, but you didn't know that, did you? You're the demon." His gaze flicked down to her lips. "I am your demon." She should have run. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, "What do you want?" He leaned in, his breath warm near her ear, his voice curling around her like smoke and silk. Everything. He didn't ask to stay. He didn't need to. Ravyn walked through her apartment like it already belonged to him. Trailing raindrops that evaporated before they hit the floor, his presence humming low and steady like a distant storm. Elira's breath refused to settle. Her skin still tingled from his touch. The warmth of his fingers branded over her wrist like a second pulse. She stood, frozen, as he circled the room, pausing by the window. With one hand, he drew the curtains closed. With the other, he reached toward a flickering candle that sparked instantly back to life. "I don't like cold light," he murmured. "It has no memory." "You shouldn't be here," she said, quietly but firmly. He turned to face her. The glow from the flame danced across his face, outlining a jaw carved in angles and shadows. That smile of his, not quite cruel, not quite kind, played again at the corner of his lips. "I've waited a long time to find you, Elira. You don't get to tell me where I should be." Her heart thudded against her ribs. "I don't even know you. But I know you. The mark on your wrist, that was carved from my realm, from my blood." He took a step closer. "It chose you." She backed up until her hip hit the edge of the table. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to feel his heat. There was no scent to him, no perfume or sweat or cologne, only warmth. Dry, ancient warmth that curled in the air like incense and wild heat. "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you here?" "Because you broke the seal." His voice softened like velvet dragged over bare skin. "Because your blood called to me, and because I am tired of resisting." Elira swallowed. Resisting what? He tilted his head slowly, like a predator deciding whether to devour or protect. You. The silence between them stretched like wire, taut and trembling. She wanted to step away. She didn't. Instead, she asked, "What are you?" His smile faded, and something older slipped into his gaze. His voice dropped, threaded with something darker. "I am a prince of the second flame, bound in exile. I was cast out before your kind stood upright, and I've burned in silence ever since." He reached out again, fingers hovering inches from her cheek. He didn't touch her, not quite, but the heat of his palm made her skin ache. "Until you," he said softly. "I thought I had no name left worth saying." The air between them thickened. She could feel her thoughts slipping, her body leaning forward without permission, her lips parted, and his gaze dropped to them. Then he stepped back. The tension snapped like a pulled thread. "You're not ready," he said, voice husky with control. "If I touch you again, I won't stop." Elira's knees weakened at the promise laced in his tone. "You need to understand what you've opened," he added, "what it means to carry my mark. I didn't choose this. No." A flicker of something crossed his eyes. "But you will." He walked to the door and paused, one hand on the handle. Then, without turning, "Sleep with the mark uncovered tonight. Let it breathe. It will show you what I cannot." And then he was gone. The room felt colder in his absence. Her skin still hummed where his hand had hovered. The candle sputtered behind her, its flame dancing like it too. Remembered his breath. She didn't sleep. Not really. When she finally closed her eyes, her dreams opened like doors. Doors that led into endless fire, and the sound of a voice whispering her name. The dreams came in fragments. A throne made of scorched obsidian, velvet drapes caught in windless air. A voice like smoke tracing across her bare shoulders. Elira drifted in and out of sleep, tangled in sweat-damp sheets, every breath drawn between fire and shadow. When she woke, the mark on her wrist had changed. What had once looked like a faded birthmark was now something else entirely. Lines, sharp and deliberate, like ink carved beneath the skin. It pulsed faintly, not unlike a heartbeat. Her skin around it shimmered faintly as if catching light that wasn't there. She didn't scream, she just stared. The apartment was quiet, save for the ticking of her wall clock. But even that felt slower somehow off, as if time itself were unsure how to behave. She covered the mark with her sleeve, then changed quickly and walked straight to the archives. She needed to be around paper, ink, something real, something she could touch without it reaching back. But the moment she stepped inside the building, she felt him. The air shifted, just slightly, not enough to stop anyone else, but enough to slow her steps. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. He was already there, not in flame or shadow, but seated casually in one of the high-backed chairs in the restricted reading room, legs crossed, reading an 18th century binding as if it were a newspaper. He wore a dark shirt, rolled to the forearms, collar open, sleeves wrinkled. Somehow, he made the space feel smaller. His eyes lifted before she even said a word. "I told you to leave the mark uncovered," he said. "I didn't say to ignore it." She approached slowly, her voice sharp despite the war inside her chest. "It's changing. That wasn't part of the deal." "There was no deal," he smiled. "But I can explain. Sit." She didn't. He closed the book with a gentle thud and stood, moving toward her with the kind of ease that made her feel hunted, even when she stood in full daylight. "What is it doing to me?" she asked, holding up her wrist. He took her hand without asking, his fingers wrapped around her wrist with firm control. Not rough, not cruel, but utterly sure of themselves. Heat flooded the space between their skin. "It's not hurting you," he murmured. "It's remembering me." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be. The mark is more than a seal. It's a tether." His thumb dragged lightly over the glowing curve. "It was designed to bind a demon to a mortal, or to banish one, if needed. And in this case?" "In this case," he said, eyes lifting to hers, "it's awakening what we were before the curse." Elira's breath caught. She couldn't look away from him. Every time he touched her, her mind blurred, her body tense like it remembered something her conscious self didn't. A hunger, a need. "You keep saying we," she whispered. "What were we?" He stepped closer. The distance between them shrank to nothing. "I could show you, but once I do, it changes everything." "I'm not afraid," she lied. He smiled again, but this time it was different. Less amused, more reverent. "Then say my name," he said. She stared at him. "You know it. It's written in the mark. You've dreamed it." Something moved through her, uncoiling. Her lips parted before she understood why. "Ravyn." At the sound of it, the room flickered. The air shifted, like pressure lifting. He closed his eyes as if her voice had touched a part of him long buried. When he opened them again, the gold behind his irises burned brighter. "You've bound me," he said quietly, "and now I'm bound to you." He leaned in. Her back met the edge of the table, breath hitching. "You're not afraid," he murmured, eyes on her mouth. "But you should be." His lips brushed hers. Not a kiss yet, just the threat of one, just the heat of a promise between them. And still, she didn't pull away. His mouth hovered, teasing, tasting the space between caution and surrender. Then he stepped back. "Not yet," he said. "The bond is still raw. If I take too much now, I won't stop." Elira's voice was barely audible. "And if I want you to?" He smiled without humor, as if the question cost him something. "Then we burn the world." By morning, the mark was no longer just warm. It ached, not painfully, not like a wound, but like a hunger. Elira stood over her sink, one hand cradling her wrist beneath the faucet. The cold water did nothing. The lines of the sigil shimmered faintly beneath her skin, like molten ink trapped in flesh. Each time she blinked, it seemed to move. She hadn't dreamed last night. No fire, no throne, no Ravyn. But the silence had not been peaceful. It was thick, expectant, as though something waited behind the veil of sleep. Breath held. She wrapped a scarf around her arm and left the apartment. But that day at the archive, nothing felt right. The pages crinkled oddly under her hands, the smell of the ink sharpened. Even the air in the binding room carried weight, vibrating with something unseen. It wasn't until she picked up her pen to make notes on a restoration that it happened. Her hand jerked. The ink spilled. Just a drop. But where it hit the parchment, it bloomed. Not like normal ink. It spread in a spiral, forming a shape, the same sigil as her wrist. Elira stared. She hadn't drawn it. But the pen moved again, like her fingers were no longer fully her own. The writing flowed, sharp and fluid, in a language she didn't consciously know. The door to the room opened. "You feel it now," Ravyn said. He didn't ask. He never did. He just walked in and closed the door behind him, the lock sliding shut without a touch. "What's happening to me?" "You've stepped into the current. The mark is awakening what's buried in your blood. It remembers more than you do." He stepped close, too close, always. "Your ink carries part of me now. Be careful what you write." She looked down at the page. The symbols pulsed, still wet, glowing faintly. She could feel his presence behind her. One hand braced on the edge of the table beside hers, the other lifting slowly to brush her scarf aside. His fingers skimmed her wrist again, dragging the fabric away, revealing the mark in full. He inhaled. "Elira," he said softly, her name suddenly a weapon. "You don't understand what you do to me." She turned, almost involuntarily. Her body didn't care about caution, only proximity, only heat. His hand came up to her jaw, thumb grazing her cheek as though memorizing the slope of it. "I try to stay away," he murmured, "but you pull at me like a current. I feel your breath in my bones." Their mouths were close, closer than ever. His touch was deliberate now, cupping her jaw, steadying her. She should have stopped him. She didn't. When his lips touched hers, it was slow, slow like time folding in on itself. Not tentative, not questioning, just inevitable. His mouth claimed hers with dark patience, like he'd waited years for this single breath. And maybe he had. The kiss deepened. She felt it everywhere. In her chest, her fingertips, her spine. A surge of heat moved through her, the mark flaring with light beneath the scarf. Her knees went weak and his arm slipped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Too much, not enough. When he pulled back, barely, it wasn't because he wanted to. He looked wrecked, lips parted, eyes heavy, voice low. If we keep going, I will not be gentle. She was breathless. Then don't be. He groaned under his breath, low and rough, as if the words undid him. His hands tightened at her waist, but he didn't move. Not yet. You think you can walk away from this? From me, he said again, voice raw with restraint. She looked up at him, lips swollen, eyes dark. No. And then he kissed her again. This time, there was no holding back. The kiss hadn't faded from her skin. Elira could still feel it hours later, like Ravyn's mouth had left a brand instead of a memory. Her lips were tender, her breath still disobedient, and the mark on her wrist had grown brighter, humming with heat, even as the rest of her tried to return to normal, but normal no longer existed. That night, Ravyn came for her again, but not with kisses, not with touch. This time, he brought her underground. Prague's bones were older than its stones, and below the city stretched a network of tunnels and catacombs the public never touched. There were places beneath the city where maps ended and memory twisted. Places only a creature like him could remember. The entrance was hidden in a forgotten courtyard near Old Town, beneath a rusted iron grate. The city breathed above them, but the air below was thick and still. The only light came from the soft golden glow of Ravyn's palm, his hand brushing the tunnel walls as they walked. Elira followed him, boots echoing softly on ancient stone, heart beating louder with every step. "You've been down here before?" she asked. His voice echoed, low and smooth. "I've hidden here, slept here. This city has always held traces of the old world, sorcery, secrets, scars. And now it hides things from you. Things meant to be found only once your mark awakened." The path narrowed. He slowed, letting her walk closer. The tunnel curved into a vaulted chamber carved directly into the rock, lined with alcoves and shelves thick with dust. At its center, a stone pedestal with a single book resting atop it. The book pulsed faintly. "You brought me here for this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped behind her, his presence pressing close, his heat warming her spine. One hand came to rest on her waist, light but possessive. "This archive was once guarded by the flame keepers," he murmured, lips near her ear. Mortals sworn to protect knowledge meant only for those bound by the mark. You are the last of them. I didn't ask for this. No, but your blood did. She stared at the book. You said I was bound to you. You are. Does that mean I'm yours? Ravyn's grip tightened. He lowered his mouth to her neck, not touching, but so close the heat of his breath set every nerve alight. You have no idea what it means to be mine. The words weren't a threat, they were a vow. Elira turned slowly in his arms, meeting his gaze. Then show me. His eyes burned. The kiss that followed was different, hungrier, deeper. His hands slid along her waist, anchoring her to him, as though he didn't trust the ground to hold them. But just as quickly he pulled away, jaw clenched, eyes wild. No, not here. Why? He exhaled, voice tight. Because the book needs your blood, not your pleasure. She shivered. Just a drop. Ravyn stepped forward, lifting her hand gently with a soft incantation in a language she didn't understand. He guided her finger to the edge of the book's cover. The mark flared and the skin split, not painfully, just enough to draw a single drop of crimson. It struck the leather binding like a spark on oil. The book opened itself. Pages flipped on their own, the ink glowing gold, then black, then red. Symbols rose like steam from the paper, swirling in the air. Elira felt the pressure behind her eyes shift, like something was unfolding in her mind. Old knowledge waking up from sleep. She staggered. Ravyn caught her, steadying her against his chest. Easy, he murmured. You're remembering. Remembering what? Who you were, what we were, what we can be again. His voice was low, rough, her body pressed against his. They were surrounded by books, by spells, by silence, everything ancient and holy and forbidden, and still, all she could feel was him. The pages settled. Elira looked down and saw the final line written across the parchment, written in her own handwriting, though she had no memory of it. The demon does not seek her soul. He already has it. They didn't speak on the way back up from the catacombs. The city above had shifted. The air felt thinner, more electric. The street lamps flickered as they passed, and people gave them wide berths without realizing why. Ravyn walked beside her, silent but charged, like a flame contained in flesh. Her body still hummed with the imprint of the spell, of the kiss, of him. At her door, he didn't ask to come inside. He stepped in as if he always had. She barely remembered shedding her coat, kicking off her boots. The room blurred around her, her mind thick with the weight of what they'd seen below. Her wrist still throbbed with the echo of blood and spellcraft. And underneath it all, beneath the knowledge and the fear, desire coiled, taut and hot. Ravyn stood near the window, watching the rain slip down the glass. "Something's changed," she said. He didn't turn to face her. "It has to. The mark. It's merging us faster than I expected. The bond grows stronger every time we touch. And if it completes..." He looked over his shoulder, slow and deliberate. "Then I'll no longer be able to resist you." She crossed the room before she could stop herself. "You talk like it's a curse." "It is. For me." His eyes burned as they met hers. "Because I want you, and wanting you is the one thing that will destroy what's left of me." She stepped closer, then stopped pretending. His breath caught. She didn't give him time to speak. Her hand reached up, touching his chest, just above his heart. She could feel the heat of it, steady and wild. His muscles tensed under her palm, not in fear, but in restraint. "Elira," he said, voice rough, warning. But she was done waiting. When she kissed him this time, it wasn't cautious, it was claiming. He answered with a growl, deep and quiet and devastating. His arms locked around her, dragging her against him. His mouth moved over hers with urgency, tasting her, devouring her, like he'd been waiting lifetimes for the chance. Clothes weren't torn, but they shifted. Hands slid over skin, hungry, reverent. She felt her back press against the wall, cold plaster grounding her as Ravyn's body caged hers in. And then something stopped, a crack in the air, a soundless shatter. They both froze. Between them, thin, shimmering, and nearly invisible, a wall of energy formed, glittering like heat rising from pavement. Ravyn exhaled sharply, forehead pressing to hers. "The bond won't let us finish it, not yet." Elira's breath trembled. "Why?" "It's protecting you from me, from itself. If we take too much before it stabilizes." He pulled back, just slightly, voice rough. "It could destroy your body, or mine. So we're trapped." He looked at her like she was the storm and the silence afterward. "No, we're caged, and the only way out is through." The wall of energy pulsed once more, then faded, but the warning remained. He didn't step away. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, slow and deliberate. "When this bond is complete, I won't just touch your body, Elira. I'll own every breath, every heartbeat, every shadow. Then I'll be ready." His eyes closed as if the words hurt to hear. "Don't say that unless you mean it. Because once I take you..." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "There won't be any going back." She didn't flinch. Good. But he still stepped away. Not because he wanted to, because if he didn't, they would burn the room to ash, and neither of them was ready for what came after the fire. The city wore its dusk like silk that evening. Clouds low, air thick with the scent of wet stone and distant chimney smoke. Elira found herself walking streets she didn't know, led only by the pulse of her mark and the memory of his mouth on hers. Ravyn hadn't returned in days, not in dreams, not in whispers, and yet she felt him, always just beyond her reach, threading through her veins like a second pulse. The invitation had arrived at sunset. No signature, just a card slipped through her mail slot, embossed with a sigil that flickered between shadow and ink. She didn't question. She went. The address led her to a forgotten corner of the city, a crumbling stone theater tucked into a blind alley. The doors opened without a sound, revealing candlelight and velvet, dust and perfume. It was like stepping into memory or a fever dream. The stage was bare, but he was there, standing beneath the arch of the proscenium, shirt half unbuttoned, sleeves rolled, hair tousled like he'd just stepped through fire. He didn't smile. He watched her descend the aisle with eyes like dusk before a storm. "You came. You called," she said softly. "No words. Just want." Her breath caught. Ravyn stepped down from the stage, each movement precise, restrained, like he was holding back 1,000 years of hunger with every inch. When he reached her, he didn't touch, but the space between them snapped tight. "This place was once a sanctuary for broken oaths," he said. "Every kiss in this room was a lie, every promise made in velvet and torn in shadow. And now..." He stepped closer, slow as smoke. "Now I want the truth." His hand came up to her neck, fingers trailing the line of her jaw. She tilted her chin, barely breathing. He leaned in, closer than he ever had before, and whispered against her throat, "Say you want this." "I want it." His lips found hers, and this time there was no hesitation. Their mouths met with fire. He kissed her like possession, like apology, like a man standing at the edge of ruin with no plans to turn back. She didn't hold back either. Her hands gripped his shirt, dragging him closer, her body pressing flush to his. The air shimmered around them, heavy with magic, thick with scent. The stage creaked beneath their weight as Ravyn backed her onto it, their shadows falling across the faded curtain like myth. When he lifted her, it was effortless. When he laid her down, it was reverent. The kiss deepened, her back arched, his hands moved like he knew the shape of her from memory, as though every line of her body had been carved for him. His voice rasped against her mouth. "Do you feel what you've done to me?" She nodded, dazed. The mark burned against her wrist, bright and pulsing, mirroring the pace of his heart, or hers. Their magic tangled, surged, trembled. And just as his hand slid beneath the hem of her shirt, the theater groaned, a sound like stone shifting, like something ancient remembering its purpose. He froze, his chest heaved. "Something's coming," he whispered. The magic in the air twisted, the candle light flickering into blue. We were followed. She sat up, breathless and flushed. By what? His jaw clenched, eyes glowing like gold struck with fire. By something older than a curse, and it's coming for the mark. He offered her his hand. She took it without question, and as they slipped through the wings into the dark, the velvet curtain fell behind them, swallowed by smoke. The theater door slammed shut behind them, sealing the dark inside. Outside, the night had shifted. The air no longer felt like Prague. It was colder, still, the kind of stillness that pressed against the skin and warned something ancient was watching. Ravyn's hand stayed wrapped around hers as they moved, fast and silent, ducking through narrow streets. His presence was a wall beside her, one that blocked everything else out, even the fear. When they reached her apartment, he didn't speak until the door was closed, the locks drawn, the sigil above the lintel glowing faintly in answer to his presence. Elira pressed her back to the wall, breath unsteady. What was that? His jaw tightened. A revenant. Not from my realm. Older. Something that feeds on broken bonds and half-forged pacts. It came for the mark. Why didn't it attack? She asked quietly. Because it saw me and because it's waiting. For what? For you to be alone. His words sank in, heavy and sharp. Ravyn looked at her then, really looked. Something in his expression shifted. He took a step closer, hands braced on either side of the wall behind her, caging her in without touching. "I won't leave you alone," he said, voice low, velvet edged, "even if it kills me." Elira's chest rose sharply, her fingers curled into his shirt before she realized she'd moved. He kissed her again, no permission asked, no hesitation offered, just heat and fire and teeth. His mouth moved over hers like he needed her breath to live. Her body melted against him, the taste of him flooding every corner of her mind, until there was nothing left but want. He didn't stop until the candles in the room began to flicker blue once more. Then he pulled back, breathing hard, voice rough. "You need to know everything before we go further." Elira blinked up at him, still dazed. "Then tell me." But he shook his head. "Not from me." He walked to the hearth and drew a velvet pouch from his coat. From it, he pulled a charred letter, creased, brittle, sealed, with the same sigil that marked her wrist. He handed it to her carefully, as if even touching it wrong could destroy it. "I found it in the ruins of an old scribe temple. It's addressed to you." She opened it with trembling hands. The handwriting was unfamiliar, yet carried a weight she couldn't ignore. "Elira, if you are reading this, the seal has broken. And And the mark has awakened long before your time. A sacred promise was forged, binding a guardian to a demon unlike any other. The prince you've met, Ravyn, is connected only to those chosen to carry this sigil. While others may have bonds of their own, yours is singular and irrevocable. The power you bear was never meant to be shared or broken, but passed down through those destined to protect it. Elira's throat tightened as she read further. The edges of the parchment singed and words blurred into shadow, marked together, not fate, but promise. He will resist, but you must not. The signature faded into ash. She stared at the letter until the words lost all meaning, then stepped toward him, heart thudding hard in her chest. So what now? His voice dropped into that dark place between a vow and a surrender. Now we finish what was never allowed. Now we bind it fully. Her skin prickled, every nerve alive, and for the first time, she didn't feel hunted or haunted. She felt chosen. They left just before midnight. The air outside smelled like storm water and old stone. The streets were nearly empty, the kind of quiet that clung to the skin. Above them, the moon had turned red, full and low, its glow heavy as blood-soaked silk. Ravyn walked beside her without speaking. His body was tense, restrained, not with anger, with anticipation. He led her to a courtyard hidden behind a crumbling chapel, overgrown with ivy and surrounded by carved gargoyles, half lost to time. In the center stood a stone circle, etched deep with markings that pulsed faintly beneath the moonlight. She felt them before she stepped inside. The sigil on her wrist answered, flaring with heat, and something inside her chest pulled tight, like a tether snapping into place. This is where it began, he said, voice low, and where it must be finished. She turned to face him, heart pounding hard enough that she was sure he could hear it. What happens when the bond is complete? She asked carefully. He stepped into the circle with her. The air shimmered around them like a curtain of smoke. I'll be fully bound to you. No other realm. No escape. And me? You'll become the flame that anchors me. You'll carry my name beneath your skin. His gaze dropped to her mouth. You'll feel everything I feel. Their eyes locked. And what do you feel now? She asked. His answer came without pause. Hunger, ache, possession. He reached for her slowly, his fingers brushing her jaw. With the reverence of a man touching something sacred, his hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. You still have time to turn away. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. His mouth descended on hers. The kiss was different this time. No hesitation, no holding back. It was surrender and claim and heat that devoured the cold. His arms wrapped around her like a promise, pulling her tightly against his body. Magic pulsed between them, slow and seductive, winding around their limbs like smoke. The sigils carved into the stone began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with her breath. Her shirt fell away under his hands, fabric slipping from her skin like it had never belonged there. He laid her down inside the circle, the stone strangely warm beneath her. His mouth never left hers, except to whisper things that made her breath catch and her body ache. You belong to me. I have waited for you through lifetimes. There will never be anyone else. And then her mark flared, bright, blinding, gold shot through with fire. Some magic surged around them, rushing through her bones, through his body, binding them in light and heat, and something that felt older than time. Her body arched, fingers gripping him. Ravyn groaned low against her throat, his voice wrecked. Elira, gods. The wind tore through the courtyard, spinning ash and moonlight, and then everything went still. She lay there, heart still racing, his body pressed against hers, their breath tangling in the space between. The glow faded from the stone. The mark cooled, and in its place, where once there was just a sigil, was now a name. Ravyn, etched into her skin in silver. He kissed it once, soft and slow, a vow sealed in silence. And for the first time, she felt him inside her, not in body, but in soul. A part of him woven through her like breath. It wasn't pain, it was belonging. The sky had not yet turned gray when they returned. Her skin still glowed faintly, the mark on her wrist no longer a sigil, but a name, a vow. Ravyn walked beside her in silence, though his hand never left hers. There was no more distance to maintain, no spell left between them to prevent what they had become. He belonged to her now, and she, by every ancient law and bond, for better or ruin, belonged to him. But even as dawn crept toward the horizon, peace didn't come. The moment they stepped through her apartment door, Ravyn stopped, his body tensed. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened. Elira followed his gaze. There on the table lay another letter, unmarked, plain. She opened it with shaking hands, one sentence, written in black ink that bled into the page like rot. Break the bond or watch her burn. She looked up at him, fear coiling tight in her gut. Who would do this? He took the note from her, fingers curling into a fist. Someone who knows what we are now, someone afraid of what we've made. What happens if we don't break it? Ravyn's jaw tightened. They'll try to tear it out of us. Can they? He didn't answer, because the truth hung between them already. If someone killed one of them now, the other would follow. The bond was complete, soul deep. It protected them, yes, but it also made them vulnerable in the most intimate way. If he fell, she would feel it. If she was taken, his mind would unravel. "They'll come for you," he said, "because I've lived long enough, because you're mortal. And if they kill you, I'll burn everything until there's nothing left." Elira stepped closer, then let them come. His hands caught her face, his eyes wild, glowing. "Don't say that. You don't know what I'll become if I lose you." Her lips brushed his. "Then don't lose me." He kissed her hard, like it might be the last time. The walls of the apartment rattled, the sigils flared in every room. A wind rushed through the window, though it was sealed tight. Magic responded to them now, not from outside, but from within. "You have a choice," he said, breath ragged. "I can unbind it, send the power back, return you to who you were, safe, free." Elira's voice was quiet but steady. "I've never felt more free than I do now." He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to hers. "You'll be hunted for it." "I don't care." Ravyn's arms wrapped around her tightly, his voice cracking into a whisper. "Then you've chosen hell." She kissed him once more, soft and certain. "No," she murmured, "I've chosen you." And the city exhaled around them. Somewhere far below, ancient chains shattered. Old oaths were undone. The revenant, waiting in the shadows, hissed and fled into the dark. The bond held, not out of fate, not prophecy, but desire, a choice freely made. And in a city built on forgotten fire, the demon who once ruled a realm of ash now knelt before the mortal who'd saved him, not with swords or spells, but with the one thing even the oldest magic couldn't fight: love. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's story. Good night and sweet dreams.